women are 3 times more likely than men to develop these neurodegenerative diseases. The insurance wouldn't cover it. The insurance said that no, she doesn't need the CAT scan, which who is the insurance to say what she does or doesn't need? They look at the data on what's been going on in the Alzheimer's space, the dementia space, with these drugs. There's a lot of falsified data. Welcome back to the Revitalize podcast. Welcome back to episode 2 of Revitalize. We made it past the first episode, so big deal there for me. Today's podcast is going to be all about my mom's story struggling with dementia and how I deal with it as a caretaker. Her son, I'm only 26, she's only 60, and we had to do this for the last 3 years now. So there's not really an outline for this podcast. It's going to be very, just me talking my way through the story and giving you pointers on this is how I dealt with these things. This is how I deal with my mom's dementia. And these are the things I have my clients do to help them avoid dementia, because that is what I do. I'm a full-time professional nutrition coach who specializes in women over 40 going through hormone changes to help them avoid the increased risk of dementia and other neurodegenerative diseases, because women are 3 times more likely than men to develop these neurodegenerative diseases. And that is likely due to many different factors, a lot of them being the crazy hormone changes that happen through perimenopause and menopause, along with, potential diet culture through the 90s and 2000s, causing them to eat very highly processed foods or not fueling enough. So their brain doesn't get the fuel that it needs. And we can get into that a little bit later. But today's podcast is gonna be all about my mom's story, why I do what I do. And if I have to take pauses to think about things, bear with me, because I didn't want to write anything out because this is something I like to truly speak from the heart on. If you haven't listened to episode 1, it's a really good one. It's all about muscle growth and how muscle impacts your brain health. There's a lot of pretty insane evidence in that one. So go check out episode 1 if you have not already, but listen to the rest of this one first. So starting out, my mom's story. How did she get diagnosed with dementia in the first place? So back in, I think it was 2020, late 2020, maybe 2021, my dad started noticing that she was just forgetting words a lot. So she'd be in the middle of a sentence, she'd be telling a story, and then all of a sudden, it just stopped. She just paused, she wouldn't be able to think of the word she was thinking of, and it would just never come. Typically, I even have that issue. I'll be telling a story and then think, wait, what was this word? It's just on the tip of your tongue. And then you think of it. For her, that would just never happen. And it would be super simple words. Like saying, look at that tree over there. She'd forget the word tree. Things like that. And it just wouldn't come to her. And that was the first indication, something is wrong. Now, during this time, she was also going through perimenopause, going into menopause. Her hormones were all over the place. So she had some, pretty severe brain fog, pretty severe hormonal symptoms. She had really bad hot flashes during this time. And so I think that during that time, a lot of it was just chalked up to the hormonal symptoms. Oh, you're just going through menopause. Your brain can't function as well. There's nothing to worry about. But in reality, there was a big thing to worry about. So, I think a year passed of it getting worse and worse. And then finally, they decided to go to the doctor. The doctor then told them to go to the neurologist. And when they went to the neurologist, they asked her very specific questions that she failed, essentially. She failed the tests. Stuff like, can you read this clock? And it was a analog clock, like a normal clock you'd see on a wall. And she couldn't tell the time on it. And she typically could. But in this specific instance, she was completely lost, had no idea how to read the clock. So they did an MRI on her brain. They did some brain scans, CAT scan, and they did see that there was deterioration in her brain. There were dark spots in her brain. And when that happens, that's obviously an indicator of a neurodegenerative disease. So fast forwarding quickly to when they technically never diagnosed her because they said we need to do a specific type of brain scan in order to technically diagnose you with dementia. That's just how it goes. They can't diagnose you fully until they do a specific form of a CAT scan. Now there's different blood works coming along that they can diagnose through blood work, but the insurance wouldn't cover it. The insurance said that no, she doesn't need the CAT scan, which who is the insurance to say what she does or doesn't need? They're not doctors, which drives me insane. And part of the reason why I do what I do is because I hate the medical system. So she never actually got the scan she needed to diagnose her fully. Granted, they could still prescribe her the drugs that she needed, which I'll get into the drugs in a little bit and everything, but she was never fully diagnosed. But whenever she called me about being diagnosed with dementia, it was it was probably in 2022, whenever she got the official, like, this is likely what is going on. So it had been almost a year and a half since she first started noticing symptoms to getting this unofficial diagnosis. And she called me. I was sitting at my desk working, and I distinctly remember her telling me that, the doctors said that I likely have dementia. The brain scans didn't look great. And even in that moment, my mom, who was always a very bubbly and happy person, didn't sound worried when she was telling me. And I'm sure that was had a lot to do with to protect me as her son. And what went through my mind as her son, I was only 24 at the time, was, I don't actually know what went through my mind. It was more of just like a silence of like, okay, this is a lot. This is very heavy. And my brain kind of went blank. I just wanted to listen to her. And I just wanted to tell her, Mom, whatever you need, I'm here. We'll get past this as best we can. Because a dementia diagnosis is a diagnosis that you can't fix. If it's caught early enough and you're working with very specialized medicine that costs a lot of money, you can help start to reverse those symptoms, but eventually it still will progress, especially when there's brain deterioration. So immediately I knew, this is going to be a years-long process of just dealing with this disease. And now, where I am, 2 years past that moment, and we're still dealing with this disease, and it's progressing every week, every month, every day. There's different challenges that we run up against. But what I did whenever my mom told me that, I was working at a job at a nonprofit that I enjoyed. I enjoyed working with this nonprofit. It was a small one. I felt like I was making a change in the world, but I wasn't happy with what I was doing. I'd always been into fitness, my own health, through high school, through college, and post-college, being only 24, I was kind of like at a crossroads of like, what do I want to do with my life? And so whenever that happened, obviously I dove deep into dementia research, like what causes dementia? What could have prevented this? Is there any option for treatment? And what I found was disheartening, to say the least, and made me want to jump into this field to make a change. And that is why I started this process of becoming a nutrition coach and understanding the ins and outs of the body and how nutrition affects it. Because looking at all that research, it really seemed to be coming up as, the more recent results in studies and in the research and in the data was showing a strong link to having an ultra-processed diet, not getting the fuel your body needs, eating ingredients that you shouldn't be eating constantly, leading to inflammation, poor gut health, inflammation of the brain, and in turn, that neurodegenerative disease. Now, that's not the sole thing that might cause dementia, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, right? It's just a part of it, granted, albeit a large part. And there's other mechanisms that might play a factor in your brain health, in your own, neurodegenerative disease that you might develop down the road. It's not all linked to diet, but it's a very large part because your diet controls your gut, which they're starting to do studies with the gut-brain connection, and they can predict dementia, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's now years in advance by looking at your gut microbiome and comparing it to the gut microbiome of other patients. So the gut plays a large role, and what you eat obviously plays a direct role in your gut health. And looking at what my mom was eating, it was a very processed diet. She was a teacher. If my dad didn't cook, she was not a cook. She liked to just toss stuff in the microwave. And I ate a lot of that when I was younger, just microwave meals, just toss it in the microwave over the summer whenever it was just my mom and I during the day at home. So we ate a lot of processed food. She never really jumped on any of the fad diets or anything because she was never overweight, but she definitely didn't eat enough to fuel her body, which in turn made it to where she wasn't eating enough to fuel her brain. Then she went on anxiety medication in her 40s because of perimenopause and the changes that your hormones come come with. And a lot of those anxiety and depression medications that are given to these women aren't super necessary, because they could control their diet, their exercise, and their lifestyle to avoid these symptoms. But what the medical system has done is they just toss these drugs at these women, because that's just what these doctors are told to do. And they're on SSRIs that they don't necessarily need to be on, which again causes different issues within the brain, changes the brain makeup, causes inflammation. And then what you're eating also causing inflammation is just a whole slew of issues that come up for your brain health. And it was just a perfect storm for her. And so looking back, I can see why she developed dementia at such an early age, because it had been years and years of the same, processed food diet, and then being on that anxiety medication. And then again, women being 3 times more likely to develop dementia as they go through perimenopause and menopause, because of those hormone changes causing an excess amount of inflammation in your body and your brain. So, with that, I decided to run with it. I became a nutrition coach, and I got my certification, and now I've been diving even deeper into the brain health aspect. Why our brain controls everything from health optimization to fat loss to muscle growth. And so that's where my program really lies, is like, let's start with your brain, whether it's mindset, whether it's understanding your habits and rewiring your brain to those habits, whether it's revitalizing your metabolism, whatever you need, that's where we start. And I believe everything starts in the brain, because you have to rewire it a little bit in order to increase your metabolic rate, create the habits that you need to create. And in turn, all of that will push you to the fat loss you want to see, to the optimal health you want to see, to the toned body you want to see. And so that's where we start to get to where you want to go. And by doing that, you're protecting your future health as well. Instead of just throwing you on a diet like everybody did in the early 2000s, which in my opinion is a large reason why we're seeing an increase in these neurodegenerative cases, because everybody was eating way too little. They were eating these crappy processed bars from Optavia and Atkins, and that's going to cause issues down the road. And so I want people to be optimally healthy while losing the fat, so that they can keep it off and love the way they feel and look for the rest of their life. And that is why I got into this, because my mom and what she went through and what I am seeing her go through now at only 60, and with dealing with dementia. So I've got my green tea here today because that is one great anti-inflammatory drink. It's got antioxidants in it, and it's a great option to replace your coffee or whatever you want to replace. Not that coffee's bad, but green tea is just better. Take a sip there to make sure I'm keeping my voice ready to rock for this podcast. So the last couple of years of dealing with this diagnosis, I moved in with my parents back in May, not just to help my mom, but just to be back in my hometown, in my area. And my girlfriend is going to med school nearby. It just worked out well. And so I've been here for the last 8 months, helping out with my mom. And there are a lot of issues that have arose. And the first one I want to talk about that we deal with on a daily basis is her food intake. Because if it were an ideal world, I'd be able to make every meal for her. It'd all be perfectly healthy brain food, like optimizing everything so that the progression is either slower or she's functioning on a higher level. And so I can't do that. In an ideal world, I could, but in an unideal world that we live in, she's going to eat what she wants. There's some mornings where I'm like, hey, I'm going to make you some eggs with some spinach and some veggies, and then we get some sourdough toast. And she's just like, no, I don't want that. And all she wants is a pancake, or all she wants is a granola bar, which obviously plays right into what you should not be eating if you want to optimize your brain health. But as her son, and wanting her to still be happy, I'm not going to, push so hard to where she's not happy with me because she wants this other thing. And I'm trying to force her to have the healthier option. Same thing goes with doctor's visits. I could keep pushing her to go to doctor after doctor. Let's get more scans. Let's do more tests. Let's try to get you on different drugs. Let's try to get you into clinical trials. But what kind of life is that if that's all she's doing? And understanding what she wants has been big for keeping the household as happy as possible. And now there's a lot of things that we just can't do for her that I wish we could do, that she really has to struggle. She really struggles with. One thing, she stopped driving a few months ago, and that's been very hard for her because she can't go do the things she likes to do. She can't take herself places. She has to ask us to take her places, and she thinks we don't want to take her places. And many times we just can't. And that makes it hard because then she thinks like, oh, they don't want to have to take me here. And then she gets upset with us. But in reality, we've got other things to do, me and my dad. And so it's just a balancing act. Now, the reason why I want to optimize her health through this food is because she is on the medication. She's on one of the Alzheimer's medications that's supposed to slow progression. It doesn't fix anything, it just slows progression. But if you look at the data, the medicine doesn't do much. It's supposed to slow progression by, I think, 18%, but it only works in about 30% of the patients that it's given to. But because there's no other medication on the market, of course it gets passed by the FDA, it goes through, and it gets given to patients, even though it doesn't work 70% of the time. And even that 30% of the time, it slows progression up to 18%. But it's really hard to measure that progression slowing because everybody's a little bit different. And so in my mind, it doesn't really do anything for my mom. If we took her off of it, would she progress faster? Maybe. I have no idea. She's just on it because she's supposed to be. But if you look at the data on what's been going on in the Alzheimer's space, the dementia space, with these drugs, there's a lot of falsified data. The study done a long time ago on the amyloid beta plaques being the reason for a neurodegenerative disease, that data was falsified by the person running the research lab. Was it fully incorrect? No, there is evidence that shows buildup of amyloid beta plaques is correlated with neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's and dementia, but it's not the cause. It is just a side effect of what actually causes it, which they still don't know 100%. You could look at multiple different mechanisms. And so what actually happens is like, oh, we're taking away the amyloid beta plaques, which in turn takes away some of the inflammation, which slows the progression. And so there is some evidence showing that, yeah, taking away the amyloid beta plaques works. That's what the drug is for. But because that data was incorrect in the past, means that there was years of drug trial data that was just worthless almost because it doesn't work. And so now we're having to kind of reinvent the wheel on the Alzheimer's and dementia medications. And so because of that, it's like, okay, well, let's try to do everything else we possibly can in order to get her to slow progression. One of the things is I brought my home gym with me when I moved in. She works out, 2-3 days a week. I have her come down and she enjoys being with me and just doing little workouts. It's going to help, continue like maintaining her muscle growth and continue just using her brain for things she typically wouldn't, which I do think will help slow that progression. And then recently, this year, there was another research center that was given a ton of money that turns out they were also falsifying data in the Alzheimer's research space. They were reusing graphs and they were reusing scans of certain things and skewing data from previous iterations of these scans. They were just taking the same thing, plopping it into a new data point, and it's kind of smudging what the graph looked like a little bit, and just to continue showing results to keep getting this money. The lead researcher never really came out and said this is why we did it, but there is really no reason to falsify data, right? You're not helping anybody but yourself. So it can only be assumed that he was doing it to continue getting funding. And now, again, another setback in the Alzheimer's research space. Which brings me to another reason why I coach and why I do what I do, is because if these Alzheimer's researchers that are getting the most money in the country are falsifying data, can we really trust any of the data that's out there? Can we really trust any of the Alzheimer's researchers? And the answer is definitely yes, but there are only like the few bad eggs in the bunch can create a ton of problems. And so understanding that you control your outcome, you control your health is very, very important. Like you can't rely on anybody else. You have to rely on you. And that's what I do for my clients is like, I teach them how to rely on themselves for health. I'm just the director, I'm just the coach, but they have to do the things. And if they're not doing the things, I call them out on it and help them do those things. Because the few things that you need for health are less overwhelming than you could expect. Because you see so much stuff online that's like, do this, do this, do this, do this. You need to be doing red light therapy, wear these glasses. You don't have to do any of the crazy stuff. You can accomplish what you want with the most basic things. You just have to create the habits around your lifestyle that fit those. You don't create your lifestyle around the habits, that's never going to work. Like I said, you have to rewire your brain to match these habits. You have to rewire your brain to speed up your metabolism, to eat the right amount of fuel. And by doing that, you're going to be wildly successful. Now, the biggest challenge I have with my mom is frustration for both of us because it's getting worse. There's some days where she can't even say one sentence. She can't string together 3 words. And so she gets really frustrated because she can't speak her mind. She can't say what she wants to say. And then my dad gets really frustrated because he's been married to her for 30 years. And now it's like, well, I just don't understand why she can't say specific things, or I don't understand why she's not answering me. And it's just because her brain can't function that quickly. You ask her a question, she might just sit there and stare at you. And she heard you, but nothing happened in her brain. There were no neurons firing to tell her to answer that question. So then you have to ask her again, or she'll look at you and go, what did you say to me? And that's one of the reasons why I don't bring her on the YouTube channel in these videos, because she can't really say what she wants to say. And if I put her on camera, it would just get worse. She'd get flustered, she'd get frustrated, and she'd kind of get like, I can't do this. Maybe she'd be fine. Maybe I should try to bring her on the camera. I just don't want to get her riled up. I don't want to get her frustrated with herself, because that's really what happens. And then myself, I even find myself getting frustrated and think, I should not have gotten frustrated at her for that. I know that she can't control it, but it's inevitable. It's the nature of this disease. And then if you've had a loved one that you've taken care of that has developed one of these diseases, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You might get super frustrated in the moment, and then after the fact, you're laying in bed at night and you're like, why did I get so upset with them? I feel so bad about it. And that's how I felt off and on for the last few months, because it's hard to deal with it all the time. And then maybe the biggest frustrating thing for her is she used to be a social butterfly. She would love talking to people. She would ring the bell for the Salvation Army just because she loved talking to people that come in. And she also loved supporting great causes. And now she just can't. Like, she'll go to a get together with my dad and she's so terrified to even say anything because she doesn't want to sound like, in her mind, silly because she can't talk. But the other people know she has dementia. They know that she can't help it, and they're fine with it. But to her, it's embarrassing, and she doesn't like having to deal with those things. So she's shut down a lot socially, which is a big issue, because the more social you are, the better your brain health actually is in many scenarios. And so we try to take her out as much as possible, try to bring her to the people she's comfortable with as much as possible, like her best friends, instead of more unknown people. And hopefully that helps her mentally, but it is becoming a real issue with the social aspect for her as well. Looking forward, I can only hope the best for neurodegenerative research. And maybe one day I'll be a part of that. That's something I can only dream of. But right now, I will coach people and learn more and more and more about the brain health and how that contributes to overall health. And that is what I want to do to make my mark on the world, to help women revitalize themselves for the second half of life so they don't have to go what my mom has had to go through, so their kids don't have to watch them go through the same thing my mom has had to go through, and put them in the same position as me, where I'm only 26 and I'm taking care of my 60-year-old mother because she developed dementia at such an early age. I hope you enjoyed this story. I hope that if you're dealing with the similar thing, this connected with you, this resonated with you, because that's really why I shared it, to help people who watch this, who are dealing with a similar thing with their parents or their loved ones, kind of reflect on it. Because a lot of times when you're stuck in the mud, it's hard to kind of step back and reflect on your life and what goes on in it. And if you've been thinking about revitalizing your own health, now is the time. There's never been a better time going into 2025 to revitalize your own health, to look at yourself and say, it's time to make a change. It's time to prioritize me. And that is the biggest things my clients tell me. They say, I'm so glad that I prioritize my own health because I can show up better for everybody else in my life. And I'm confident in my health long term. And that's what my program does. That's what Revitalize is for. And that is what I love to do. Thanks for watching another episode and listening to another episode of Revitalize. This was episode 2. Episode 3 will be coming out soon. If you have not gone and seen episode 1, it is very informative. I'd recommend you go watch that. If you want to learn more, I have a blog as well. Go check out the links in the description for my blog posts, all about optimizing your health through different means to help your brain and optimize your fat loss, your metabolism, everything. Those are gonna be in the description. I also have a Facebook community. That's gonna be in the description. Go join that Facebook community to get daily trips, trainings, guides, everything you could possibly imagine. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next week.